Have you ever wondered how some rock stars managed to escape prison despite paying over $10 million in settlements for shocking crimes? From Josh Homme facing accusations of aggression from his ex-wife to Varg Vikernes serving time for homicide and church burnings. 25 rock stars accused of serious crimes. 1. Mick Jagger. One cold night in February 1967, police raided a house in a county in England. Inside, music played, smoke filled the air, and Mick Jagger, the lead singer of the Rolling Stones, was there. This became known as the Redlands Bust, a raid meant to embarrass the band. It started when a tabloid published a false story about Jagger using substances. Angry, Jagger thought about suing, but the newspaper acted first. They worked with the police and set up the raid. Inside, officers found Jagger, Keith Richards, art dealer Robert Fraser, and Jagger's girlfriend, Marianne Faithfull. The press made Faithfull seem scandalous, but the real issue was the substances the police found. Jagger was charged with having amphetamines. Richards got a worse charge for allowing substance use in his home. The judge sentenced Jagger to 3 months in jail and Richards to a year. People were shocked. Even some conservative writers said the punishment was too harsh. In the end, the court overturned the ruling and Jagger was free. But the damage was done. The Rolling Stones were now seen as rebels, and their fight with the law had just begun. 2. Keith Richards. His troubles with the law didn't stop there. Keith Richards' most serious arrest happened in Canada in 1977. This time, it wasn't just a small charge. The police found almost an ounce of opiates. If convicted, Richards could have gone to prison for life. His lawyers argued that he was an addict, not a dealer. The court agreed. The judge reduced his punishment, ordering him to perform a charity concert for the blind instead of serving time. It was a lucky break, but it added to his legend. A year later, Richards was arrested again in the U.S. for narcotics. Yet somehow, he always avoided serious punishment. People started to believe he was untouchable. His survival through years of arrests and substance use became part of his image. Even in his later years, Richards joked about his past, proving that in rock and roll, some stars were just too big to fall. 3. Chuck Berry. His career was filled with both success and scandal. Chuck Berry, one of the pioneers of rock and roll, had his first big legal problem in 1959. Authorities charged him under the Mann Act, a law meant to stop the trafficking of minors. Berry had hired a 14-year-old girl to work in his nightclub. Later, she was found in another city involved in adult work, and Berry was blamed. His trial was unfair. The first conviction sentenced him to 5 years, but it was thrown out because of racial bias in court. He was still found guilty in a second trial, but served less than 2 years. Though his reputation suffered, he kept making music and shaping rock's future. In 1990, another scandal hit. Police raided his home and found hidden cameras in the women's restroom of his restaurant. Several women sued him. Berry denied doing anything wrong, but paid over $1 million to settle the cases. They also found controlled substances and weapons, but he was never charged. 4. Axl Rose. His wild and unpredictable behavior was well known. Axl Rose often got into trouble, both on and off the stage. One of the most famous incidents happened in 1991 in St. Louis. During a concert, he saw a fan filming the show. Angry, he jumped off the stage and started a fight. The crowd went out of control, leading to a riot. Many people got hurt, and things were destroyed. Rose fled the state, but he couldn't escape the law forever. Eventually, the charges caught up with him. Off-stage, Rose faced serious accusations of aggressive behavior. His ex-wife, Erin Everly, claimed he mistreated her for years. She filed a lawsuit describing terrible physical and emotional pain. The case never went to trial because it was settled out of court, but the accusations remained. Another ex-girlfriend, model Stephanie Seymour, also said Rose assaulted her. Despite multiple legal troubles, he rarely spoke about them. Over time, people forgot, and he returned to music with Guns N' Roses. His fans stayed loyal, and his reputation remained strong in the rock world. 5. Marilyn Manson. His music and scary appearance shocked the world, but behind the scenes, there were darker things. Marilyn Manson faced serious accusations in 2021 when actress Evan Rachel Wood accused him of abusing her physically, emotionally, and intimately. For years, she had talked about being a victim of domestic mistreatment, but never said who hurt her. When she finally named Manson, whose real name is Brian Warner, more women came forward with similar stories. They described a pattern of control, fear, and pain. One of the most disturbing stories came from Esme Bianco, an actress from Game of Thrones. She said Manson tricked her into moving to Los Angeles with promises of helping her career. Instead, she claimed he kept her trapped in a harmful situation, hurting her physically and emotionally. His former assistant also accused him of terrible behavior, saying he used his fame to control and harm others. Some lawsuits were settled, but the accusations never went away. The impact on Manson's career was immediate. He lost music deals, TV appearances, and support from the industry. He denied everything, saying the claims were lies meant to destroy him. But his image had already changed. This wasn't just another shocking stunt. This was something real and serious. For years, the rock world had ignored bad behavior. But now, people were paying attention. The dark persona Manson had created was no longer just an act. It had become a symbol of something far more troubling. Sid Vicious. His life as a punk rock star was fast and wild, but his most famous moment was not about music. Sid Vicious faced tragedy in October 1978 when his girlfriend, Nancy Spungen, was found dead in their bathroom at the Chelsea Hotel in New York. She had been stabbed once in the stomach. The knife used was one Sid had bought earlier that day. Sid was found in an intoxicated haze, unable to explain what had happened. Police arrested him for second-degree homicide, but his story kept changing. First, he said he stabbed her. Then he said he couldn't remember. Some people thought it was a substance deal gone wrong. Others believed it was a robbery. But Sid was too lost in substances to give any real answers, and the truth remained a mystery. Things got worse for him. While out on bail, he was arrested again for attacking a man. He even tried to take his own life in jail. The punk world watched as he fell apart. Before his trial could begin, he overdosed on a potent opioid at a party celebrating his release. He died on February 2, 1979, at just 21 years old. 7. Tommy Lee. Tommy Lee was the drummer of Motley Crue and lived a life full of parties and trouble. But in 1998, his wild ways led him to jail. His crime? Hurting his wife, Pamela Anderson. One day, inside their home in Malibu, they had a fight that turned violent. Anderson, holding their baby, called the police. When they arrived, she was bruised and scarred. They arrested Tommy right away, and the world saw a rock star face real punishment for his actions. During the trial, Anderson spoke the painful truth. It wasn't the first time. But it was the first time she asked for help. Instead of denying it, Tommy pleaded no contest. He was sentenced to 6 months in jail, had to take anger management classes, and do community service. Being famous couldn't protect him from justice. He only spent 4 months in jail, but the damage was done. His marriage with Anderson was never the same, their love forever broken. And the world saw that rock and roll life wasn't just about fun and rebellion. Sometimes it turned into something much darker. Vince Neil. On a night in December 1984, Neil had been drinking in Redondo Beach, California. Despite being drunk, he decided to drive his red 1972 Pantera. His friend, Nicholas Razzle Dingley, the drummer of Hanoi Rocks, sat beside him. The two had been partying hard, caught up in the rock star lifestyle. But their night ended in tragedy. While speeding through a residential area, Neil lost control of the car. It crashed into another vehicle with great force. Razzle took the life of instantly. Two people in the other car, Lisa Hogan and Daniel Smithers, suffered serious brain injuries that would never heal. The world watched in shock as another rock and roll disaster unfolded. Neil was charged with drunk driving and causing a death, but his punishment was shockingly light. He was sentenced to only 30 days in jail and served just 15. He also paid a fine of around $2,000, did 200 hours of community service, and settled a multi-million-dollar payout to the victims. Many people were outraged. Did fame protect him from real justice? Despite this tragedy, Motley Crue continued making music and living wildly. Neil also kept struggling with alcohol. He was arrested for drunk driving again in 2002 and then in 2010. The accident that took the life of Razzle remained a dark mark on his career. It was a warning about the dangers of reckless living. But the world still celebrated the band that made excess their brand. 9. Ted Nugent. In the 1970s and 1980s, stories surfaced about Nugent and young girls. One of the most shocking cases involved a 17-year-old girl from Hawaii named Pele Massa. The law said he couldn't have a relationship with a minor, but Nugent found a way around it. He became her legal guardian. This might have been legal, but it disturbed many people, who saw it as a trick to avoid the law. Massa wasn't the only case. Many reports suggested that Nugent had relationships with underage girls. In interviews, he made comments that only made things worse. In a 1998 documentary, he even bragged about being with young girls, joking about something that many found deeply wrong. Still, Nugent faced no real punishment. His fans, especially those in conservative circles, defended him. They said the accusations were false and made up by people who wanted to ruin his reputation. Even as society became stricter about past actions, Nugent refused to apologize. He claimed the stories were lies created by people who hated him. 10. Ronnie Radke. His life has been full of ups and downs, but in 2006, Ronnie Radke faced a turning point. As the lead singer of Escape the Fate, a fight in Las Vegas changed everything. The fight got out of control, and someone named Michael Cook was shot and lost his life. Radke didn't shoot the gun, but because he started the fight, he was held responsible under Nevada law. He was charged with battery and accessory to homicide. He was already in trouble for substance-related issues and didn't follow court orders. In 2008, a judge sent him to prison for 2 years. His music career stopped, and his band moved on without him. He had lost it all, but prison didn't destroy him. It made him stronger. While locked up, Radke planned his comeback. When he was released in 2010, he started a new band called Falling in Reverse. Their first album was full of anger and pain from everything he had been through. Fans loved it, but trouble still followed him. Even after his return, he kept making headlines for the wrong reasons. People accused him of being violent and reckless. At a 2012 concert, he threw microphone stands into the crowd and hurt fans. No matter how successful he became, his past stayed with him. 11. David Crosby. His talent was undeniable, but addiction was a constant battle. David Crosby, a key member of Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, saw his substance use spiral out of control over the years. In 1982, police in Texas arrested him after finding a stimulant substance and a loaded gun in his possession. This dangerous mix led to his time in prison. Unlike some famous people who avoid punishment, Crosby had to face the truth. He spent 5 months in jail. He lost his freedom and had to confront his addiction. Later, he admitted that prison saved his life. Being forced to detox gave him the clear mind he needed to change. When he got out in 1986, he worked hard to fix his life and career. But it wasn't easy. Many people didn't trust him anymore. He had to prove he was different. Crosby became an advocate for sobriety, warning others about addiction. He reconnected with old bandmates and returned to music with a fresh mindset. Still, not everyone forgave him. Some saw him as a man who beat addiction, while others only remembered his mistakes. But one thing was clear: David Crosby refused to give up. 12. Varg Vikernes. Black metal is a dark and intense kind of music, but no one represents that darkness more than Varg Vikernes. He was once a part of the famous band Mayhem, helping to create the raw and heavy sound that made the genre popular. But in 1993, things took a violent turn. Vikernes had a fight with his bandmate, Øystein Euronymous Arseth. That fight ended with Vikernes stabbed Euronymous many times, shocking the entire Norwegian metal scene. People still argue about why it happened. Some say Vikernes thought Euronymous planned to harm him, while others believe they were fighting over money and power. Either way, the homicide made Vikernes infamous, turning him into a dark legend beyond music. But that wasn't his only crime. Vikernes was also connected to several church burnings in Norway, including the destruction of Fantoft Stave Church, a historic building from the 1100s. He claimed these fires were a way to fight against Christianity, which he saw as a foreign influence. The burned churches became a symbol of Norwegian black metal's rebellious and dangerous image. Vikernes was found guilty of arson and homicide, receiving the longest prison sentence in Norway at the time, 21 years. When he was released from prison in 2009, Vikernes had not changed much. He moved to France and got involved in extreme political beliefs, leading to more controversy. He was even arrested again for alleged terrorist activities, though the charges were dropped. Today, Vikernes remains a debated figure. Some see him as a musical genius, while others view him as proof of how dangerous ideologies can be. Either way, his story is not yet over. 13. Josh Homme. His leadership of Queens of the Stone Age made him a rock icon, but in recent years, serious accusations have followed him. Josh Homme's ex-wife, Brody Dahl, has accused him of being violent, describing times when he was drunk and threatening. Legal documents tell of scary moments, including times when their children were afraid of him. Their divorce battle was messy, with both sides making accusations, but the damage to Homme's reputation was done. His aggressive behavior isn't just in his personal life. In 2017, during a concert, Homme was caught on camera kicking a photographer in the face. People were outraged, though he later apologized. Some who have worked with him say he is unpredictable, especially when drinking. This has led many to wonder whether his bad behavior is just part of the rock star lifestyle or something more serious. Despite these controversies, Homme continues to make music and go on tour. Some fans still support him, saying his music should be separate from his actions. Others believe he should face consequences. The music world has often protected famous artists from responsibility, but for Homme, the debate continues. 14. Steven Adler. His drumming helped shape Guns N' Roses' sound, but fame came with a price. Steven Adler, the band's original drummer, struggled with addiction, and by 1990, his use of a powerful opioid made him unreliable. His bandmates had no choice but to fire him. Instead of getting better, Adler's problems got worse. In the years that followed, he was arrested many times. In 1996, he was caught with a powerful opioid. His addiction led to a near-fatal overdose, which caused a stroke. The stroke left him with trouble speaking and facial paralysis. Even after this, he kept struggling with substances and had more run-ins with the law. His life became a sad story of wasted talent and missed chances. Still, Adler tried to make a comeback. He had short moments of success, like when he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He even played with Guns N' Roses again for a short time during their big reunion tour. but his life is a warning about the dangers of fame and addiction. His struggles left deep scars that will never fully heal. 15. Pete Doherty. His talent was undeniable, but his life was a mess. Pete Doherty, the singer of the Libertines and Baby Shambles, was seen as a genius, yet his wild lifestyle ruined his career. He got arrested many times, starting in 2003 when he broke into his bandmate's home. This act of self-sabotage led to a short stay in jail, but his troubles were far from over. Substances were his biggest problem. He used a potent opioid and crack, a powerful stimulant which made him act out. He was accused of giving a potent opioid to an unconscious fan, a shocking moment that showed how low he had fallen. He also got into fights, attacking a reporter, cab drivers, and even his own fans at concerts. No matter how many times he was arrested, he never seemed to learn. His relationship with supermodel Kate Moss kept him in the news, making him the face of rock and roll chaos. Even so, he never completely disappeared. He tried to get clean many times and moved to France to escape his past. But people wonder, can he ever stay sober? Or is he just one mistake away from becoming another sad story? 16. Nick Oliveri. His wild energy on stage made him stand out, but his life off stage was full of problems. Nick Oliveri, the bassist for Cuse and Queens of the Stone Age, often got into trouble. And in 2011, things took a serious turn. One night in Los Angeles, the police were called to his house because of a violent fight with his girlfriend. She was trapped inside and couldn't leave. When the police arrived, Oliveri refused to let them in. Instead of calming down, he locked himself inside, leading to a tense standoff. The situation got so serious that a SWAT team had to be called. After hours, they finally broke in and arrested him. What they found inside made things even worse. The police discovered several illegal guns, including loaded rifles and hidden handguns. They also found substances. Oliveri now faced serious charges that could put him in prison for more than 10 years. This was not the first time he had been accused of aggression. 7 years earlier, he had been kicked out of Queens of the Stone Age for being abusive toward his partner. To avoid a long sentence, Oliveri took a plea deal. He got probation, had to do community service, and had to take anger management classes. Though he stayed out of prison, his career suffered. Many people now saw him as a dangerous person. His name became linked to aggression and trouble, and he struggled to rebuild his reputation. 17. Randy Blythe. His powerful performances made him famous, but one show in Prague in 2010 led to a tragic accident. Randy Blythe, the lead singer of Lamb of God, found himself at the center of a legal nightmare. That night, a fan named Daniel Nosek kept trying to climb onto the stage. Blythe, annoyed and not realizing the danger, pushed him back into the crowd. On one of those falls, Nosek hit his head hard. His injuries were serious. A few days later, he slipped into a coma and died. At first, no one outside of the Czech Republic paid much attention to the accident. But 2 years later, when Blythe returned to the country for another concert, he was arrested at the airport. The charge was manslaughter. The metal community was shocked. Could a singer really be blamed for this? Blythe was locked in a Czech prison for more than a month. His fans and fellow musicians supported him, saying security should have handled the fan. During the trial, prosecutors argued that Blythe had been careless. His defense team said he had no idea the fan was hurt. After weeks of arguments, the court decided he was not guilty. He was free, but the experience changed him. 18. Tim Lambesis. His success as a metalcore musician made him famous, but behind the scenes, his life was falling apart. Tim Lambesis, the lead singer of As I Lay Dying, faced serious troubles by 2013. His marriage was ending, he had money problems, and he was getting desperate. Instead of handling things the right way, he made a terrible choice, one that almost destroyed his life and career. Lambesis didn't just want a divorce. He wanted his wife gone forever. He decided to hire someone to take his life. What he didn't know was that the hitman he met in a parking lot was actually an undercover police officer. He gave the officer money as a down payment and provided pictures of his wife, her home address, and her daily schedule. He made it clear he wanted her dead. But before anything could happen, the police arrested him. The news shocked the world. A rock star planning a homicide? It seemed unreal, but it was true. In court, Lambesis' lawyer argued that using steroids had affected his judgment, making him aggressive and irrational. But the prosecution said this wasn't a mistake. It was a planned crime. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 6 years in prison. However, the controversy didn't end there. G.G. Allin, chaos in human form. That was the only way to describe him. G.G. Allin wasn't just a musician. He didn't just push limits. He destroyed them. His concerts were more like battles, with mayhem, riots, and police ready to stop the madness. Unlike most musicians who got into trouble by accident, Allin ran toward danger and destruction on purpose. His list of crimes was shocking. He was arrested for things like public indecency and violent assaults. But his most serious crime happened in the late 1980s when he was accused of attacking a woman. He went to prison, but instead of learning from his mistakes, he came out angrier. He promised to make his music even more extreme and continued his violent ways. His concerts were horrifying. He hurt himself, attacked fans, and did things so disgusting that many couldn't believe a person could behave that way. His goal was total anarchy. Police were at his shows as often as guitars were, always ready to stop the chaos. Despite everything, Allin had fans who saw him as a true rebel. He often said he wanted to die on stage, but instead he died from a potent opioid overdose in the early 1990s. Even in death, the madness continued. At his funeral, fans treated his corpse like part of the show, taking photos and celebrating in bizarre ways. Some call him a punk legend. Others think he was just a criminal. But one thing is clear, there was no one else like him. 20. Phil Rudd. His drumming helped shape some of the most famous rock songs ever. But offstage, his life was full of problems. Phil Rudd, the drummer for AC/DC, found himself in serious legal trouble in the mid-2010s, changing everything for him. His behavior in court didn't help. He arrived late, looked confused, and even fired his lawyer during the trial. People started wondering if years of partying had finally caught up with him. In the end, he pleaded guilty to making death threats and substance possession. Instead of going to prison, he was sentenced to home detention. AC/DC didn't wait for him. They decided to move on without him. Once an important part of their music, Rudd had become too much trouble. He later tried to restart his career, but his reputation was already damaged. Now, instead of being remembered for his music, many people think of his crimes first. 21. Tracii Guns. His role in the glam metal scene made him a famous rock guitarist, but for years he avoided scandals. That changed in the early 2020s when Tracii Guns was arrested for domestic aggression. His wife called the police after a heated fight, and he was taken into custody. Fans were shocked. He had built a solid reputation, but now his name was connected to something serious. The police found enough evidence to charge him. Though he was released on bail, the damage was done. The music industry and domestic aggression activists reacted strongly. His career, built over decades, was now at risk. Some rock stars have faced serious consequences for their actions, while others have managed to continue performing. Would Tracii Guns be able to recover, or was this the end of his career? 22. Carl Logan. His powerful performances made him a well-known guitarist. But in 2018, Carl Logan's name became linked to a horrifying crime. He was arrested for possessing illegal materials. and the news shocked the music world. Police in North Carolina found digital files in his possession. The materials were classified as highly illegal. As investigators dug deeper, they discovered this was not a one-time mistake. It had been happening for a long time. Fans who once admired him were disgusted. The evidence was overwhelming. There was no way to deny his guilt, and his future in music was destroyed. Manowar quickly cut ties with him. They made it clear he would never return. His name was erased from the band's history. Logan's troubles did not end there. In 2022, he pleaded guilty to multiple charges. His sentence was harsh, and he had no chance of escaping the consequences. There would be no comeback for him. His name, once celebrated, became something shameful. His music remained, but he was erased from the industry. 23. Jim Gordon. His beats shaped legendary songs, making him one of the greatest drummers in rock history. But behind his success, Jim Gordon battled inner demons. For years, his mind was a battleground, and in 1983, he lost control in the worst way. Gordon suffered from schizophrenia, though it was not diagnosed at the time. The voices in his head became unbearable. Friends noticed his strange behavior, but no one realized how dangerous it had become. On June 3rd, he attacked his own mother with a hammer and knife, ending her life. The world was stunned. Police found a man completely detached from reality. He was later diagnosed with schizophrenia, but the court ruled him fit for trial. He was sentenced to 16 years to life in prison. His career was over in an instant. His drumming still played on records, but his name was no longer celebrated. Instead, it was remembered with horror. He remained in prison, his talent overshadowed by his crime. The echoes of his music lived on, but his legacy was forever broken. 24. Seth Putnam. Pushing limits was what he was known for. As the leader of Anal Cunt, Seth Putnam made music that mocked everything and everyone. His lyrics were full of insults, his concerts were chaotic, and his life was wild. He didn't follow rules, on stage or off. Some thought he was just playing a character, but his anger was real. And in 2004, it became clear that his aggression wasn't just an act. That year, Putnam was arrested for a brutal attack on his girlfriend. It was so bad that she could have died. Instead of denying it or showing regret, he made jokes about it. He laughed at people who called him out. He acted like it was just another part of his rebellious image. But this time, people weren't laughing. His extreme behavior had always been shocking, but now it was impossible to separate his music from his real-life actions. His legacy was no longer just about offensive songs. It was about real aggression, self-destruction, and substance addiction. The man who built his career on outrage was now falling apart, and this time, it wasn't a joke. 25. Anthony Melhoff. Chaos was nothing new for him. Anthony Melhoff, the leader of the extreme band Cancer Christ, was known for wild performances full of fake blood and religious mockery. Fans never knew if it was real or just a show. But in 2024, things took a dark turn. He was arrested for assault, attempted kidnapping, and robbery. This time, the blood wasn't fake, and the consequences were serious. Cancer. Christ was known for blurring the line between performance and real aggression. Some people loved it, others feared it. But Melhoff's arrest forced fans to question everything. According to the police, he attacked someone, tried to keep them from leaving, and stole from them. If true, these charges wouldn't just end his career, they could send him to prison. The details were unclear. Some said it was just a fight that got out of hand. Others claimed it was something worse, something planned. His fans were split. Some believed he was misunderstood, that his wild stage act had been mistaken for real danger. Others couldn't defend him. Law enforcement saw him as a serious threat, not just a performer pushing boundaries. Would the underground music scene support him, or was this the end? Some fans stood by him, calling it another chapter in his extreme artistic vision. But others decided they couldn't excuse real aggression no matter how much they loved his music.